The bar was packed shoulder to shoulder that night, the kind of crowd where you lose your friends in the sea of bodies and find them again by shouting their name over the music, and that's exactly why Sarah ended up sitting on my lap in the first place. There was simply nowhere else for her to go. But what nobody, including me, expected was what happened 20 minutes later, when the couple beside us stood up and left behind one single empty bar stool. She saw it. I saw it. And she never moved. If you believe in second chances, in the kind of love that hides in plain sight for years before anyone notices it, hit that like button right now, drop a comment telling me you're watching, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel because this story is about to take you somewhere you won't forget. My name is Daniel, and Sarah had been my best friend since we were 19 years old, back when neither of us owned a car and we used to split a single order of fries because that was all either of us could afford. We had been through breakups, job losses, family funerals, and every forgettable Tuesday in between. She knew my coffee order without asking. I knew which song made her cry even though she pretended it didn't. 10 years of friendship had built something so solid between us that neither of us ever thought to question what it actually was, because questioning it felt dangerous, like poking at a foundation you were standing on. That night at the bar was supposed to be nothing special, just a birthday celebration for a mutual friend, one of those gatherings where everyone from the old friend group crawls out of their adult lives for a few hours to pretend we're all still 23. The place was so full that when Sarah came back from the bathroom, there was no chair left for her, and without even thinking about it, she laughed and dropped herself right onto my knee, one arm slung around my shoulder to keep her balance, the way she'd done 100 times before at crowded holiday tables and packed movie theaters. It meant nothing. It had never meant anything. That was simply how we existed with each other, easy and unguarded, the physical shorthand of two people who had stopped being strangers a decade ago. We talked like that for a while, her weight settled against me, her laugh vibrating through my chest every time someone told a bad joke, and I remember thinking, not for the first time, how comfortable this was, how I could sit like this forever and never feel the need to check my watch. But comfort has a way of hiding things from you, and it wasn't until the couple beside us gathered their coats and walked out, leaving one empty stool right there, inches away, that something in me went very still. I nudged her. I told her there was a seat now, she didn't have to keep sitting on me, my leg was probably falling asleep anyway, all the small, deflecting things you say when you're trying to sound casual about something that has suddenly stopped feeling casual at all. She glanced at the empty stool. I watched her glance at it. And then she just shrugged, settled back in, and said something like, "I'm fine here," before continuing the conversation with our friends as if nothing had shifted. But something had shifted. At least in me. I spent the rest of that night distracted, nodding along to conversations I wasn't really hearing, because my mind kept circling back to that empty stool and the fact that she hadn't taken it. Sarah was not a clingy person. She was independent to the point of stubbornness, the kind of woman who insisted on carrying her own suitcase even with a sprained wrist, who split every bill down to the cent because she never wanted to owe anyone anything. So for her to stay pressed against me when freedom was sitting right there, empty and available, didn't add up with anything I thought I knew about her. Unless it did add up, just not in the way I had let myself consider before. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake replaying a decade of moments I had filed away under, just friendship, the way she always sat closest to me at group dinners, the way she called me first when something good or terrible happened before she called anyone else, the way she used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long drives and I never once thought to wake her early. I had built an entire relationship's worth of intimacy and called it nothing, because naming it felt like it might break it. The next few weeks were harder than they should have been. I found myself hyper-aware of every small thing between us, terrified that I was imagining a shift that didn't exist, equally terrified that I wasn't imagining it at all and had simply been too much of a coward to see it for 10 years. I almost said something twice. Both times I swallowed it back down, telling myself that risking the friendship for a feeling I couldn't even be sure of was reckless, selfish, the kind of thing that ruins good things for no good reason. Sarah, for her part, seemed unusually quiet during that stretch too, though she never mentioned the stool, never brought up that night at all. There was a new carefulness in the way she talked to me, small gaps in conversation where normally she would have filled the silence without hesitation. I told myself I was imagining that too. It was almost a month later, at another gathering, smaller this time, just the two of us at a quiet coffee shop on a rainy Sunday afternoon, when she finally said something. She had been staring into her cup for a long moment, turning it slowly on the table, and then she asked me, without any preamble, whether I remembered the night at the bar. I said I did. She asked if I remembered the empty seat. My chest tightened so hard I almost couldn't answer. I told her I remembered that too. She told me that she had noticed the seat the same second I had nudged her toward it, and that in that moment she had made a choice, a small, quiet, terrifying choice, to stay exactly where she was instead of moving to somewhere safer, somewhere that asked nothing of her. She said she had spent 10 years convincing herself that what she felt for me was simple loyalty, easy affection, the kind you feel for someone who has simply always been there. But sitting on my lap that night, with an empty seat calling her toward comfortable distance, she realized she didn't want distance. She wanted exactly what she already had, except she wanted to stop pretending it was something smaller than it was. I sat there across from her, rain streaking the window beside us, and felt something crack open in my chest that had been sealed shut for so long I had forgotten it was even there. I told her that I had spent that same month lying awake, turning over 10 years of evidence I had refused to look at directly, terrified of losing her by naming what I felt, more terrified of losing years I could never get back by staying silent. I told her that when I saw that empty seat and she didn't take it, something in me had hoped, quietly, desperately, that it meant what I was too afraid to believe it might mean. Neither of us said the word love that day, not yet, because some things need to be built slowly even after they've already been true for years. But we held hands across that small coffee shop table, fingers laced together in a way that felt both entirely new and like something we had been doing our whole lives without realizing it, and for the first time in a decade, neither of us pretended that the space between us was just friendship. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of someone who has always been sitting closer than you realized, please take a moment to like this video and share it with them. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the people who feel the most familiar are the ones we've been too afraid to truly see. And before I tell you how this story ends, I want you to do something for me. Scroll down and comment one word that describes what you would have done in that moment, staying or moving to the empty seat, because I read every single comment and I want to know how many of you have your own empty seat you've been too afraid to take. Sarah and I have been together for 3 years now. We got married last spring, in a small ceremony with the same friends who were there that night at the crowded bar, and during the reception, someone joked about setting up 2 chairs side by side for us instead of one, and Sarah just laughed and pulled her chair closer to mine anyway, the way she always had, the way she always will. Sometimes the biggest love stories don't begin with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes they begin quietly, with a full room, a missing chair, and someone choosing, without a word, to stay exactly where they already belonged.